is Tuesday, March 8th. You're watching Right on Cue College Sports. Welcome in. That's right. You are watching Right on Cue College Sports. I'm your host, Tyson Quiller. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for checking us out. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Feel free to share our content with whoever you think might need a little bit of inside information before filling out their NCAA Tournament bracket. Like I mentioned in the last episode, estimated something around 70 million men's NCAA Tournament brackets will be filled out over the course of the next week. If you want yours to succeed, maybe we got some information for you. Also, don't forget, I'm reading through your feedback. I very much appreciate it. RightOnQCS@gmail.com. Feel free to send me your feedback, and I will get back at you. Let's go ahead and kick this episode off by taking a look at our Bubble Watch. As we are now less than a week away from Selection Sunday, let's go ahead and take a look at the good news for bubble teams that are not these teams, obviously. First of all, Kentucky, number 7 in the country, gets a pretty solid win on the road at Florida by 8. Florida, a solid bubble team. They now have a terrible draw in their SEC tournament against Texas A&M. Florida and Texas A&M were both bubble teams at this moment, so probably whoever loses that game is now out of the NCAA tournament officially. In this game, Oscar Tshiebwe set the SEC double-double record with 25 on the season. He had 27 points, 15 rebounds, also 3 steals and 2 blocks. As you know, this has been my dude for NCAA Player of the Year for months and months now. He just continues to just be a monster, do whatever he wants against whomever the opposing team is. The next game that I want to take a look at here real quick that was good news for these bubble teams like Colorado is Purdue winning at home over Indiana. Indiana was significantly on the bubble. They now get a matchup against Michigan. Similar situation, like I said, with Florida and Texas A&M. Whoever loses that game is almost certainly out of the NCAA tournament. The Boilermakers defense looked really strong in this game, and kind of like I mentioned in our last episode, the kid Eric Hunter Jr. really coming on strong. 17 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. You add that piece to the Jaden Ivey, Travion Williams, and Zach Edey three-headed monster they had going. I think Purdue is a team to be reckoned with right now. Indiana has dropped to the first 4 out in the bubble discussion. Also, massively good news if you're a bubble team. I mentioned before in an episode about bid stealing, right, where there's a conference where only one team will go, but they're good enough to go even if they don't make the NCAA, or even if they don't win their conference tournament. Well, that is Murray State. Murray State advanced to the conference championship game of the Ohio Valley Conference to take on Johni Broome and Morehead State. Morehead State hung tough, but ultimately Murray State beat them by 4 points at the end. Murray State did not lose a single conference game all year. Murray State is a team that we'll see where they end up seeded, but this is a team that maybe could get overseeded, to be honest with you. And you might look at them maybe losing in the first round just because a lot of people are really high on this team, 30-2 on the year, and they really haven't faced any semblance of competition. Their dynamic duo, though, of KJ Williams down low and Tevin Brown at guard. KJ Williams, Player of the Year in the conference, and really a stud, kind of a double-double guy himself. The guard, Tevin Brown, has been orchestrating really well in this championship game. He had 23 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. That's a hell of a stat line for him. Murray State is projected as a 9 seed. If they're 9, I could see them upset an 8. If you see them at like a 6, look for them to lose to the 11. Got to be honest with you. Then, just a quick rapid-fire run through a couple of other games. We got Seton Hall knocking off Creighton. Creighton is now down to the 10 line in the NCAA bracketology. Virginia Tech lost to Clemson. Virginia Tech has dropped now to the first 4 out. Oregon lost to Washington State. They've pretty much all but eliminated themselves from the NCAA tournament. And in the quarterfinals of the West Coast Conference tournament, San Francisco knocks off BYU. BYU should be out, completely out of the discussion. But BYU dropped to just the first 4 out in bracketology. Now let's take a look at some of the bad news for the bubble teams. North Carolina dominates Duke at home or at Cameron Indoor. Armando Bacot and RJ Davis looked elite in this game. They had a good high-low balance to their game going. The Heels have now moved to an 8 seed. They are not anywhere near the bubble at this point. Meanwhile, like I mentioned in last week's episode, Duke's defense has real problems. I think their best hope at this point is for a 2 seed, but as you saw in my projections for the conference tournament, I have them bowing out before that and getting a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Here's some more bad news. Alabama lost on the road to LSU. Alabama is projected as a 5 seed. LSU is a 6 seed. Okay, think about this. Alabama has 12 losses on the year, and they're projected as a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. LSU has 10 losses on the year. The identical record as Colorado, and they're projected as a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. Continues to baffle me. Also, bad news out of the Atlantic 10 Conference. I told you, this is another bid steal conference. Davidson is probably going to the tournament no matter what. We need them to win the conference tournament. They haven't kicked off their conference tournament yet, but Davidson lost their final regular season game to Dayton. Dayton, absolutely a team that can steal a bid there. Dayton moves to the first 4 out, and Davidson is now an 11 seed in bracketology. Like I said, this one could be a 2-bid league. That could be bad news for the Wyomings and the Colorados of the world. And finally, Miami beats Syracuse. You wanted that one to go the other way. Syracuse is out, but Miami holds on to a 10 seed at this point going into the ACC Conference Tournament. Now let's go ahead. Let's take a quick look here at the local teams and what's going on there. We had Colorado State knocking off Boise State at home. There was some confusion about this. Boise State had a 2-game advantage ahead of Colorado State in the conference standings. So even though Colorado State won, Boise State still won the regular season of the conference. Colorado State is hot fire right now. This is probably the biggest regular season game in program history up in Fort Collins. The Rams just had a 5-point lead at halftime, but then they quickly squandered that away. It was kind of a back-and-forth battle of titans all of the second half. Colorado State was down 68-67 with just 1 minute left in the game. Ultimately, though, the Rams defense shut out Boise State in the last minute and secured the win. Isaiah Stevens finished with 12 points, 7 assists. Massive. Great orchestration out of your guard in Isaiah Stevens. David Roddy, 23 points, but just 4 rebounds. He also had 4 turnovers. So a little bit of a concern with his play, but keep in mind Boise State is a top 20 defense in the country, so that might just kind of be an aberration. Boise State won the conference regular season, like I mentioned, and I think they definitely look like a tournament caliber team. But it's clear at this point that the Rams, in my opinion, are the best team in the conference. Both teams are currently projected as a 7 seed at this moment. Here's a team I have not discussed much, and they are having a phenomenal season. Chris Jans has really built quite a program for the New Mexico State Aggies. They are now basically a juggernaut in the WAC. They have 25-plus wins in 3 of their last 4 seasons. What was the one season they didn't? It was the COVID season. So that one doesn't really count. They have the junior guard Teddy Allen, who is the brother of Timmy Allen on the Texas Longhorns basketball team. He's putting up 19.5 points, 7 rebounds, and 2.5 assists per game. He's been an absolute stud. Bracketology, for whatever reason, has Seattle projected as winning the conference and taking the 1 bid from that conference. But I think the Aggies beat Seattle twice this season by an average of 15 points per game. I don't understand where they're getting that. I think this squad will be dancing, the New Mexico State Aggies, and they'll probably be on the 13 or 14 line. And their record currently is 24-6 on the year, maybe more likely to be a 14 seed. Now let's turn our eyes to my Buffaloes here. 20-10 on the season after they got a big win on the road at Utah. This was absolutely one of those games where you could see a letdown occurring. You have the big win over Arizona, then you're traveling to Utah. The Pac-12 really keeps trying to make this a rivalry, but we don't really have much of a rivalry with Utah, and you start the conference tournament after this game. Could have been a real letdown for the Buffaloes. They stood tall. They came out hot fire. Man, this Buffalo squad looked elite early on. Like I said, by halftime, Evan Batty was 4 for 6 from three-point range. Jabari Walker, 2 for 2 from three-point range. For those of you uninitiated, those are our two front court guys, not guards. Those are our big men, okay? The Buffs led 50-29 at halftime. The big men drove the bus, like I said, for Colorado. Batty finished with 27 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. That's the send-off he needs as a senior. Walker finished with 22 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists. Another double-double for the future pro, Jabari Walker. I will say, though, they did fade a bit down the stretch. This was a game they were up 20-plus for 3 quarters, 4/5 of the game. But they did let up a little bit down the stretch, making the score look a little bit closer than the game actually was. Final score 84-71 on this one. I think these Buffaloes enter the postseason play, like I mentioned last week, as absolutely one of the hottest teams in the Pac-12. Now let's take a look at the Pokes, the Wyoming Cowboys, who have been really on a bit of a skid as of late. What's the opposite of hot? That would be these Wyoming Cowboys. They've been pretty cold as of late. Came limping in from Vegas after losing 3 of their last 4 games. But they hold on to pull off the victory at home over Fresno State, 68-64. They were out-rebounded by 8 in each of their last 2 losses, and they have 18 turnovers in those 2 games. Some real problems going on for Wyoming. Real concerns. This is a team that looked like they might be the best team in the Mountain West for most of the season, at least in my estimation. The Pokes have slid all the way from a 6 seed down to the last 4 in the latest bracketology, which is where they stand today after pulling out a very important but way too close win over Fresno State. Like I mentioned yesterday in the episode, if Wyoming just beats UNLV and then loses, I think they're in, but they're going to really be sweating come Selection Sunday. So you want to get the win over UNLV and then the win over Boise State to secure that spot. Let's take a look at the road ahead for some of the regional teams. Air Force is a 10 seed in their conference tournament, 11-17 on the season, 14-3 in conference. They're playing in the Mountain West Conference Tournament, which is at the Thomas and Mack Center in Vegas. Here's what they're going to have to do to make the NCAA tournament. Got to beat Utah State on Wednesday, Colorado State on Thursday, and then either San Diego State or Fresno State on Friday. And then what's their reward for doing all that? Then you have to beat Boise State or Wyoming in the championship game on Saturday. They have to win all of those games in order to make the NCAA tournament. That's a hell of a tall task. Then for the New Mexico State Aggies, they are the 1 seed in the WAC tournament. I mentioned 24-6 on the season, 14-4 in conference. This is the most weird, bizarre bracket setup I've ever seen, but it really works. Well, there could be a debate whether it works to the advantage of New Mexico State or not, but the Aggies only have to win 2 games to win the conference tournament. This tournament for the WAC is also played in Vegas at the Michelob Ultra Center. Here's the road ahead for New Mexico State. Got to beat Grand Canyon or Sam Houston on Friday, and then they'll get Seattle or Stephen F. Austin in the championship game on Saturday. I think, unfortunately, they do have to win both of those games in order to make the NCAA tournament. If they don't win the conference tournament, they're probably not dancing. How about the Northern Colorado Bears? 3 seed in their conference tournament, 18-14 on the season. They just had a heartbreaker loss to Montana State, I believe it was, on a last-second three-pointer. The Northern Colorado 13-7 in conference. Their tournament is played in Boise, Idaho. Here's what they got to do to make the NCAA tournament. Beat Eastern Washington on Thursday, 8 p.m., then beat Southern Utah, who they've beaten twice already this year, on Friday. So I think, UNC could march to the championship game of this tournament, but then they get Montana State, who just beat them on that last-second buzzer beater 3, or Weber State, who, as a program, has a ton of NCAA experience, in the championship game at 6 p.m. on Saturday. How about my New Mexico Lobos? 9 seed in the Mountain West Conference Tournament. They're 13-18 on the year, 15-12. Like I mentioned, same conference as Air Force. This one's in Vegas, Thomas and Mack Center. Here's what New Mexico's got to do to make the NCAA tournament. They got to beat Nevada on Wednesday at 11 a.m. then beat Boise State on Thursday at noon. They then have to beat Wyoming or UNLV on Friday at 6:30. Now, New Mexico did just beat Wyoming, and they've beaten UNLV earlier this year. So it's not impossible, but the bigger hurdle is going to be getting past Boise State. And then ultimately they would have to win the conference championship game Saturday over Colorado State or over San Diego State. They haven't beaten either of those teams this year. Tall task for the Lobos, but that's what they got to do to make the NCAA tournament. How about for the Colorado State Rams? Well, they're in no matter what. No, I've got more to say about that. They're the 2 seed, 24-4 on the year, 14-4. One of the best seasons in Colorado State Ram program history. This is also at the Thomas and Mack Center in Vegas. They're currently a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think they could move up to a 5 seed by making the conference championship game or winning the conference outright. If they bow out early, I think you see them drop from a 6 to like an 8 or a 9. But like I said, they're still in the NCAA tournament. Their first game, 6 p.m. on Thursday. They get the winner of Air Force or Utah State. They are 4-0 in their 4 matchups with those two teams. Won them by an average of 11 points. A pretty relatively easy entrance into postseason play for the Colorado State Rams. Now, let's look at some teams that are on the bubble. Colorado, 4 seed in the Pac-12 tournament, 20-10 on the year, 12-8 in conference. The Pac-12 tournament is played at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. First, Colorado gets Oregon on Thursday at 2:30 p.m. That's Pac-12 Network. They then would have to beat Arizona they would then have to beat Arizona on Friday at 6 p.m. That's also on the Pac-12 Network. Both Oregon and Colorado won on the road against each other. Both Arizona and Colorado won at home against each other. And in that situation with Arizona, Colorado won decisively by a lot, by double digits at home. Arizona won decisively by a lot, by double digits on the road. Colorado's got a chance in both of these games. We'll see what they could do. I think at that point they should be good enough, like I mentioned, to make the NCAA tournament. I think here's some other games you're going to want to keep your eye on. If more than half of these outcomes happen, then I think Colorado's in with a win over Oregon and Arizona. Okay, starting Thursday, Creighton loses to Marquette. Michigan and Indiana play, so the loser of that's going to be out. Wake Forest loses to Miami. Okay, Xavier needs to lose to Providence. For Colorado, Wyoming loses to UNLV. That would bump Wyoming out. Virginia Tech loses to Notre Dame. Virginia loses to North Carolina. Both of those are probably going to happen. Florida loses to Texas A&M. That's on Thursday. Friday games you want to keep your eye out for. You need Memphis to lose to UCF. You need Rutgers to lose to Iowa. You need SMU to lose to Wichita State. And then you want Texas A&M to lose to Auburn. And then on Sunday, like I mentioned before, Davidson needs to win the Atlantic 10 championship. So if Colorado gets the win over Arizona, they would then go on to the conference championship game where they would take on either UCLA or USC. Colorado has played 3 games against these two teams. They're 0-3 versus the teams from LA. The Pac-12 Conference Championship game is Saturday at 6 p.m. on Big Fox. How about the other borderline team? This is Wyoming Cowboys. They are on the inside, barely looking out. So you got to do enough to secure your spot in the NCAA tournament. Again, Mountain West Conference tournament at the Thomas and Mack Center in Vegas. First, they get UNLV Thursday at 2:30 p.m. I think if they win that, they're probably in. Again, just to reiterate, they would probably still have to sweat it out Selection Sunday. But again, I listed off all of those games just a minute ago with Colorado. Wyoming wants those games to go those ways. So if you're a Wyoming fan or a Colorado fan, you want to keep your eye on those games I just listed and make sure that the teams that I told you, they need to win those. That's going to just keep pushing teams off the bubble and out, off the bubble and out. Ultimately, then, Wyoming, after beating UNLV, would play Boise State on Friday at 6:30, and then they would likely get the winner of Colorado State or San Diego State in the conference championship game at 3 p.m. on Saturday. The tournaments start Wednesday. This is an exciting time. Get your notepad out. Take your notes. this is where you're going to inform your decisions when you make your bracket selections come next week. We are now, 9 days away from the first actual NCAA tournament game, which will take place next Thursday. A couple of pigtail games in on Tuesday. Nobody really cares about those. The tournament begins in full force next Thursday. So that's about all I got for today. Thanks again for checking out Right on Cue College Sports. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this content with people you think it might be helpful for or they might enjoy it. And again, always welcome your feedback to rightoncuecs@gmail.com. I'm Tyson Quiller. Thanks again for checking us out. We'll get at you next time.